I think that you and I have a similar age, and we have to be of that similar age to understand what the real effects of inflation are. We haven't seen serious inflation in this country, as you know, for over 30 years. And sadly, it's here. And once it takes root, it's quite hard to eradicate. What are we doing in ASDA? Well, we're doing the same as everybody will be wanting to do, and that is to make sure that we give our customers the very, very best value that we can do for them and help them ameliorate the costs that they're now facing and the costs that are coming across from every sector, whether it's energy, whether it's petrol, and whether it's food.
Yeah, it's interesting, and you're absolutely right about Emsworth. My father was doing navigational training on Thorney Island in those days when I was born in Emsworth. And you're absolutely right about the age thing as well. I tweeted the other day that I'd never known it worse than right now, although we've been through similar situations. But to have the combination of rising interest rates, falling demand, rising prices, rising taxation, rising national insurance, that is a collision that is going to make life brutally painful for ordinary consumers and brutally painful for people like you trying to serve those consumers.
Well, you're absolutely right. And, just doing some research recently, we know that our customers, our average customer is basically their incomes are down by about £11 a week on a year ago. And that's the biggest decline in expendable income that they probably had for 10 or 15 years. And people are going to have to make choices. They are going to have to tighten their belts. And sadly, there's not a lot we can do to fill the gap. We can help them, but we can't fill it entirely. And certainly, for our part, I was up in Leeds with ASDA this week, and we sat down for the whole day, and we're talking about what we're going to do to make sure that we make our life easier for our customers. But there's no quick solution.
Yeah, and my overall theme, and that's why I said to the team when I knew that you were kind enough to join us, because I think it is a big deal, is however painful it may seem to you or me as taxpayers, as citizens, as consumers, the fact of the matter is that what economists call aggregate demand, everything that is purchased, ordered from shops, online, wherever it might be, that's aggregate demand. That's the UK PLC. As that falls, your profitability will decline. Dividends to your shareholders and therefore pension funds will decline. And also opening new shops, new branches of ASDA, giving folk new jobs. That's all going to be under pressure as well. It really is the big macro picture.
Well, the good news is, and we always have to be glass half full, Alistair. Luckily, I'm a glass half full guy. The good news is that if you look back to recent events, look back at Brexit, look back at COVID, British business is pretty resilient. British business is pretty flexible. British business will come up with some answers. But yes, you're quite right. We will have to find ways of ameliorating these problems, and it's not an easy one. Government has a part to play here. I mean, if I'm honest with you, you alluded to the fact that I'm a Conservative peer, which I am, but I think the government's been fairly slow to recognise some of this problem coming up down the hill. I think so they've been slow, slightly tin-eared, if I might say so, about how we talk to our customers and talk to our constituents about how we're going to deal with the problems, and a bit slow in putting some actions in place to help them with their problems over the short term.
That's a fascinating response, because my next question generally, I could turn the camera around and show you, but you mentioned about tough decisions earlier on when you were talking about us as consumers. Rishi Sunak, the Tory Chancellor, said, I can't do everything. He said that in the spring statement. He said it in a podcast interview with the BBC just a couple of nights ago. He did have choices. He's sitting on a war chest of around about £50 billion. He could have released more of that to those in real need. As a businessman and as a Tory, did he make the right choice there? Or is that an example of what you've just called him being a bit tinny when it comes to hearing?
Well, I think the problem the government's got is that, of course, that it's had a situation for the last 2 years where it has literally been handing out hundreds of millions of pounds quite sensibly in support of COVID. And it's very hard to explain to people once COVID, if you like, has started to disappear, why there aren't similar amounts of money around to help us with this inflation. Now, governments can't actually just close the door on inflation or pay for the inflation bill, but governments can look caring. Governments can do some things. And just in my own industry, for instance, I mean, there are a number of legislative things coming through now in business that we're having to deal with, whether it's plastic tax, whether it's a new legislation on fats and sugars, etc. And are there things that we could do that actually could be delayed whilst we get through inflation and before we push hard. And it'll be the same conversation we're having now about energy. We're having now very suddenly to look at alternative energies. Well, we should have perhaps thought about that earlier, because it's been quite clear that overdependence on oil and gas from the east has not served us well.